thesis right here.
Yeah,
Public
Yes.
hearing on the Columbia Gateway.
But still in the sense that it go public hearing and then resolution.
so it'd be 7A is this, and then 8A is resolution. Oh, really? You just want to take a look at last year's video and just tell me what it says. Or I don't know how else we'd do it. I don't know what could have created. Is it legislative?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Find my way to it.
Let's see.
There.
You got the memo, we're all in.
Lions,
Red.
no,
Like 4 of us wearing red tonight.
I ran out of space, but after number 10, we go to number 11 in the back, executive session.
Can I take this back? Thanks.
Oh, I just need the language, sorry.
And
So write down right now.
here. Oh, merciful goodness.
We have the longest resolution. But making allocations. And certifying.
Nah. I don't know how to squeeze a.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Got it.
Yes.
Now we do, it's a public hearing, so it will need a script. Yeah.
resolution number 23-002, adopting the FY 23-24. What's FY?
Fiscal year
Fiscal year, okay, budget for the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Activity Agency. Okay,
making.
well, is that what that is? So
Well, let's. I did.
How you doing?
making
Okay.
allocations and certify
Certifying a request.
okay. A request for maximum tax revenue to the county assessor. Well, you'll be next to him if I need to ask.
I'll actually be sitting where Angie is.
Oh, well, then you won't be able to help me. Okay. Well, I'll mumble through it.
So, regarding a script,
Mhm.
I have one for planning commission. But the meeting, watch the video.
Mhm. That's how I'd do it if I had the time to do it. I'm looking at another place to find it.
Well, I would need to be one that's specific.
We get one off from the city agenda.
By the way. 7A, adopting the fiscal year 23. This is just everything that's down here. So you would just say adopting the fiscal year 23-24, and then you start reading from budget. Does that make sense? So it's repetitive. I just didn't want to have to write it twice. Work for you?
Figure it out.
And then you just read from adopting the fiscal year 23-24 budget, and then you finish reading this whole thing.
Okay.
And then.
right.
Open the hearing, and I'm gonna try to write.
And then I still need to do it when we get down to the resolution. All right, so needs to be read twice.
I'm gonna be in the same spot, so now I get to sit next to
This thing.
You'll know you ticked me off.
Hi,
How are you?
good, thanks.
Got it all organized?
No, they're still working on it, so we'll wing it.
You will get it just fine.
Mr. Hagee,
Timmy, I get to sit next to you.
that's right. You better straighten up, boy.
Fine evening, yeah, next to them.
Bring snacks for us tonight?
Oh,
Fair today? Or
yep,
You didn't bring snacks?
part of the job
I thought
responsibility.
it was. Maybe that's Dan's responsibility.
I thought it went,
Somebody from the city
urban renewal chair was responsible for home baked goods.
I'm gonna delegate.
There you go. That's a good one.
We have oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, we have 2 minutes.
Good, how are you? I'm actually exhausted. How I am. Just got back from Idaho, like,
It's a long haul.
yeah, I was putting. My son-in-law is putting flooring in my mom's cabin up there, and I was helping and
Oh, my
taking my
goodness.
mom's car up that I drove up from San Diego and
Oh, my goodness.
Idaho,
Idaho.
we may,
What now? What are we doing? Night?
Which she said she
It is, that's her house.
we may be part of Greater Idaho.
What do you think about that?
I don't.
To you, Commissioner, what do you think about that?
I don't see it ever happening. People get pretty riled up about it.
Do
that's
they?
for sure.
I thought it was just like someone yanking people's chains to get like some business.
Well, it is, but you know, they've had elections. Or like just advisor elections several times. And it's passed, several, but not like.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Usually it's, you know, maybe 60-some%. And then there's people out there like, yeah, we get it. We get why you want to do that, but it's like. Come on,
It's silliness, but
it is kind of serious.
what do I know?
'Cause I'm
Draw
not-
the line at the two,
Yeah.
across the Deschutes. We're
I
gonna have
know.
birds.
I mean, I'm from Idaho, kind of, so I don't have a problem with Idaho. But I don't think. Realistic. I was a little surprised that the Idaho legislature actually passed something, you know, I think this was several months ago, passed something saying out to Oregon to talk about.
We have a quorum.
I think that's what Paula said. We did.
Study that, you know, said there.
I think Shannon's gonna be here in just a minute on the
Oh,
thing.
on Zoom.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, right, west side. I mean, there's so many things that, you know, we couldn't pay for if it wasn't for the money. coming into the
I'm
state of
curious,
New
does rural Oregon know like how it would pay its bills
Mexico.
and
Exactly.
you're not gonna have highway maintenance in, you know, backside of Gillum County or something. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway,
Yep. How are you?
my year of college,
Really?
and it's like, it doesn't
Is she-
pay.
It doesn't at all.
Did Kim home?
What's she doing this summer?
Got a car and drove back to Portland.
Really? Is she?
She's moving into a house with four other gals.
Okay. Just
She
dropping
has a
there.
job and
What's she studying?
music, theater and a business.
Oh, wow.
Theater and business with a little extra
Okay.
music and Spanish
Yeah.
on the side. Probably.
Yeah.
We'll see. In a year from now, we'll see.
Just want to be a doctor?
She loves theater
Really?
from
Has
single
she-
digits.
Has she
All.
obviously done? well?
Yeah, I mean, when she was in high school, she was all the high school plays, was lead a couple of times.
Yeah.
Carried, you know, singing, carried lots of lines. Wrote a short play
Really?
and another short
Oh,
play.
that's interesting.
And that was kind of fun, put them on. You could tell like what she was reading at the time, because one was like an Edgar Allan Poe play, and the next was like a if you would house like farce, you know, that ended with the dancing scene. It was like, okay,
It's
just
interesting.
working things. No, she's
no.
legitimately down with
Did she go
theater.
to Oregon? Yeah.
UP. Yeah.
Oh, University of Portland.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank heavens. 'Cause she applied far and wide, got into a bunch, but
Yeah.
didn't,
Yeah,
but no financial. aid.
yeah.
And we said.
He's a pretty nice school. I remember we
think
visited
so.
there,
So,
and
believe
it
so.
seemed like a great campus, kind of an interesting location. And then all of a sudden you're in like this.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you cross, it's not a wall, but it kind of feels like you
Mhm.
cross a wall and it's this little, it feels like its own secluded
Right.
little bit of
it seems
ivy covered,
yeah,
you
and
know,
it seems substantial enough, but not too big, you know. there
small
was-
school. They're
Yeah.
like, I don't know, 3,500.
But it was big enough that it had a college feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a good fit.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's cool.
So anyway, that's what's going on in the Richardson household. There's a
Good job.
sociology research project. I guess she's doing part of the research,
Hmm.
following people reading stuff.
Oh, fascinating. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Know some of the folks there.
We can wait a couple minutes. Maybe.
Just wait for the signal.
Waiting for Josh to give a signal.
Nope.
Who's giving you the signal?
She'll give me the thumbs up.
That was Jessica.
Shannon's on. Zoom.
Shannon's on there. I was gonna say, do we have a quorum tonight? But I see, yeah. Thank you.
That's where we're waiting. That's
Got
great.
it. Ooh, I'm sorry to down. Let's see.
Goodbye.
Won't say that. Into my office.
Where's that? Where's your office?
He's well practiced at that verse.
Where's your office?
Down the hall.
You don't ever want to go to Mr. Fox.
No. Yeah, not when you leave.
Oh, you have lots of stories and,
No.
yeah.
Welcome to tonight's Columbia Gateway Renewal Agency Board. Today is May 16th, 2023. It's 5:35. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Stacy Coburn,
Present.
Scott Hagee,
Here.
Darcy Long is absent, Tim McLaughlin,
Present.
Peters is absent, Dan Richardson,
Present.
Shannon Saldivar,
Present.
and we have two positions vacant.
All right. Counselor Richardson, would you please recite the Pledge of Allegiance for us?
We'll follow along.
Yes.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we need to now accomplish the approval of the agenda. We've had some changes. We are dropping number 8. Is that correct? Yes, we are dropping number 8 for tonight. Let me check. That's it. So we need an approval. Anyone who would like to make a motion?
Vice Chair McLaughlin,
Yes, sir.
might I recommend, in addition to deleting number 8, actually just replacing number 8 with a public hearing because it's mislabeled on the agenda. It currently says action item, but that is a public hearing.
Okay, I'm gonna leave this one and go back over to one you printed for me. All right. So we are now at the approval of the agenda, but we're going to add resolution 8A and 9 staff comments, projects, updates. Correct?
9 remains the same.
Do what?
Yeah, 9 remains the same.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Just-
8 would be the public hearing.
Got it. That would just be the addition to tonight's agenda. Hearing that
I would move approval as recommended.
as recommended, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Hi.
Any opposition? Also, let's get the Zoom. Got it. Okay. We also need to approve the minutes from the last session. I hope everyone's had a chance to look at that. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? If not, hearing none, I'd like to have a
I'd move
There you
approval of
go.
the minutes for April 18th, 2023.
good,
I'll second.
perfect. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Public comment. I gotta go here. Public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject that does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Do we have anyone that would like to speak or present? I don't see anything on Zoom. All right. Let's then move on. If we have no public comment, let's go to number 7, action item. Adoption of the fiscal year 2023-24 budget for the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency. And the other action item would be consideration of urban renewal funding of Freebridge Brewing located at 710 East Second Street and the supplemental packet to follow. I must have that.
And if I can interrupt for
Yes.
1 minute here. So the adjustment we made to the agenda would be removing 7A and basically relabeling 7A as 8A.
Okay,
So then we'll start, the first action item will be 7B.
7B. So that's where I need to read the,
7B is the consideration, I believe, for the mint,
for the what?
for the mint.
Oh, the mint.
Freebridge.
Freebridge, all right. So now, would you like me to read the resolution number 20? Not necessary? All right. We're having to do this on the fly since we made some changes here,
And we very much appreciate it.
so we can get this moving through. So we were now back to action item, the adoption of the fiscal year budget for the Gateway Urban Renewal Agency.
Nope, no. So so we're gonna do 7B right now.
Okay,
So
so-
we'll chat about 7B for a bit and then we'll go into 8A 7B will become essentially 7A. Apologies on this, but then, yeah, we'll kick the budget to the right after the mint building.
All right, then let's have a consideration of the urban renewal funding of Freebridge Brewing located at 710. Is there a staff report?
There is.
Good, now we got it.
Thank you. Thank you for your attendance this evening, as well as your understanding with this little flop we made in the agenda, as well as, the agenda overall. The packet, as you know, went out last Wednesday, but then there was a supplemental packet that went out Friday evening. Hopefully everybody received that. If not, we have a printed copy for you if you need to take a look. So the first, this item regarding the consideration for the mint building, this is something that was discussed at the meeting last month. Steve Light, the owner and operator of Freebridge, presented information regarding a long-awaited expansion to the brewery as well as the pub facility. Project includes the expansion of kitchen and seating areas, exterior alley access for shipping and receiving, significant upgrades to the existing wastewater sewage infrastructure, and a new effluent sewage installation to include a 200-gallon grease interceptor. The initial estimated cost of this project, as discussed at that meeting, was $270,000, $278,800. And as a property located within the agency, within the area boundary, this project may be eligible for urban renewal funding. So following that presentation, the agency directed staff to coordinate with the applicant on a formal proposal for a funding consideration. In that time, the applicant received a fire, life, and safety assessment of the building, which identified some additional improvement costs and requirements. That has been added to the budget in addition to the cost of a roof repair, a much needed roof repair, increasing the overall budget to $413,000. The building is currently owned by the Dalles Mint LLC, and Freebridge Brewing is the majority tenant as well as the applicant for this project. Freebridge has a current lease ending in May 2024 with a signed letter of intent to purchase the building dated April 14th of this year. So the funding request in front of you today is 50% matching funds. So a total of $206,000, $206,640. You'll see we've attached on the attachment A, there's a full breakdown of all the work that is proposed for this, a pretty substantial amount of work for this building. As included in the narrative that was provided by the applicant stated that funding for this project, regardless of urban renewal's participation, will come in the form of cash savings from both the Dalles Mint LLC and Freebridge Brewing. So a tax burden impact on this is in 2022, the Dalles Mint LLC had a Wasco County tax assessment of $11,705. With these improvements, we'll see an increase. There's an estimated increase of 16.25% for a total of $13,608. In 2002, Freebridge Brewing had a personal property tax of $4,063. With these additional improvements and equipment investment, the estimated tax increase will be an estimate of about 51% up to $6,162. So in total, with both property and personal property tax, an annual increase of approximately $4,000, just over $4,000. So looking at the benefits of this project, it really fits the agency's mission, which I'll read that for you. The agency's mission is to eliminate blight and depreciating property values within the agency's jurisdiction, and in the process, attracting aesthetically pleasing, job-producing private investments that will stabilize or increase property values and protect the area's historic places and values. So some other benefits to this project are the projected annual gains. It's being projected that the revenue gains for the pub and restaurant portion is a 50% increase, and the revenue gains of the brewery is 25% increase. In addition, this project will provide some local job creation. 8 new full-time positions are being created once everything is finished. 6 of those will be in the tap room kitchen and 2 within the production brewery. And the majority of the construction that would be completed for this project or contractors that are located within the Columbia Gorge the greater Columbia Gorge region. Something to add to this is that the increased gains in the brewery and increased production, there'll be increased product distribution and marketing. I threw that in there. It's basically the Dalles name will be distributed further and further to a local convenience store near you. And the preservation and expanded use of such a historic building in our downtown core area is quite the benefit as well. So staff's analysis looking at this proposal, originally the applicant applied for a mixed use incentive program project. I think we discussed this last week, with the hope of receiving a 70% match up to $150,000. But as we discussed, although the building is an existing mixed use development defined in land use, it does not meet the newly defined mixed use definition within the incentive program, which the incentive program is specifically the addition of residential units. This standard is inconsistent with land use. However, this does reflect the agency's commitment to promote new residential units in the area. As a result of it not fitting into the mixed use category, the project is still eligible for the commercial incentive program, which is providing funding up to $50,000. And in looking at the project scope, staff determined a large majority of the proposed work will be funded through the incentive program. So when the agency adopted the incentive program, we, as you know, established a list of eligible and ineligible projects that would provide kind of a streamlined format to encourage investment in the area. Although the agency and program administrator, myself, the manager, have full discretion on funding requests, these lists were created to avoid the need for additional comprehensive financial analysis of proposals that come forward, like we have here in front of us today. In the event an individual seeks funding outside of the incentive program, they can make a pitch to the agency to request additional funds. And at that time, the agency may require additional information, which you did at the last meeting, to be submitted. And the consideration should be the consideration on the overall return on the investment for the money that the agency would be contributing towards the project. In analyzing the proposal, agency staff used the annual tax increase that we talked about to determine the ROI, that 4,000 annual increase to determine the ROI. And we looked at one, we looked at a recent project, as everybody knows, the Tocola project. This was known as the federal project. This was money that the agency committed back in 2017, 2018. That project at that time showed a 16-year return on investment. And then we also looked at one local agency, Q Life, when they enter into or look at a targeted range for their public-private fiber projects of a target of 15-year return on investment. And Commissioner Hague, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but we took that as kind of a threshold when considering this proposal. And we looked at what would it take to have a 16-year return on investment for this proposal. So in doing that, we took the overall tax increase, the annual tax increase of $4,000, multiplied it by 16 to get just over $64,000. Now, this does not take into effect the 3% annual increase that may occur with taxes, any fluctuations in the stock market, a depreciation that would occur with the equipment that is installed in there, but it should provide an adequate approach for estimating purposes. Conversely, staff calculated the ROI of the applicant's request at $206,000 and determined that that would be a return of 52 years to return that investment. So funding alternatives, at the April 18th meeting, there was multiple board members that expressed some interest in possibly funding up to 50% of the project. That was mentioned a few times, but additional information needed to be provided before a decision was made. At that time, as a reminder, the proposal in front of you was $270,000. The one in front of us today, as you can see, has been a 53% increase of that to this 413. That was to include necessary improvements due to the fire life and safety assessment, as well as this roof repair that I previously discussed. Due to continued increases in interest rates and costs for financing, the applicant and property owner have not committed to external funding avenues and acknowledge that funding funding for this, regardless of urban renewal, will come in the form of cash savings. This demonstrates that there was not a gap in funding demonstrator of the information that was provided to us. So staff took that into consideration. So to ensure a 16-year return on investment for this contribution, staff is recommending that the agency enter into a development agreement to fund the project not to exceed $65,000. In addition, staff would encourage that the applicant apply for the incentive program, commercial program, for up to $50,000. Looking at those two figures added together, that's a combined $115,000 that the agency could potentially contribute to this project, which is just under a 28% of the total project budget. In the event the agency agrees to fund the applicant's request at $206,000, staff would recommend subtracting $30,000 from that to budget for work that's previously been completed, fire, life, and safety. This is similar to our incentive programs that we don't fund work that has previously been completed. In addition to the project management fees that will be paid to the property owner. This reduction would then result in a total of $191,000, which is the 50% contribution. And as mentioned, that is the staff's recommendation for those reductions. So following an approved funding amount, agency staff will prepare a development agreement between the agency and both the property owner and applicant as equal partners. And we'll create, provisions in there to amend the agreement in the event that the property owner property is transferred to the applicant. Because as I mentioned, there is an intent to sell from the applicant. So there's definitely that commitment that they will be purchasing the building. But as how it currently sits, the applicant is a tenant and the property owner still outright is the owner of the land. So staff's alternatives, looking at board alternatives, staff's recommendation would be moving to approve funding not to exceed $65,000 for the Mint building redevelopment and direct staff to prepare a development agreement between the agency and both the property owner and applicant. And keep in mind that staff recommendation does not take into the fact that they can also apply for that $50,000 incentive program that would be handled entirely at the staff level and would not have to come in front of the board. And then there are also two other options there to consider. And with that, I am more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Chandler? Anyone?
I have a quick question. The commercial program you just mentioned, that's for like let's say somebody had a project today, specific project, and they applied for it and were awarded that through your guys' office. Is there a time frame, or if they have a different project, can they continue to apply for additional funding for different projects, like within the same business or whatever?
Good question. It's a one and done situation. Yeah. So once that $50,000 is spent, then it's done. We do have one applicant here in town, one property owner that's entering into their third agreement, their third application, because they haven't yet met that 50,000 threshold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's a different business, then it would be allowable to have a different application, or is it I'm just thinking of a tenant and an owner of the thing, if there was any issues there.
Yeah, so we enter into an agreement with the property owner.
Yeah.
So the property owner and then the tenant each of them could not apply.
Okay, even
Yeah.
if it was a totally different project.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, thanks for the clarification.
There questions? Any questions on Zoom? All right.
I have one.
Okay, yes,
Chairman.
please.
Josh, do we have any consideration, formal or traditional or not, for ROI on taking into account jobs created?
Not for this proposal. We did not. No.
What about
yeah.
other, is that something that ever enters or has in the recent life of
Yeah.
agencies, you know, such that you're aware of?
Yeah, and with the Tocola project that was discussed, the Tocola project considered the jobs created on that. There was, I guess, there wasn't for jobs created there. Excuse me. It was for the tenants. That was strictly for tenants. So yeah, because tenants, that one was figured that tenants living within the area will spend so much money within the area, therefore looking at the return from the tenants living there, but not so much on the job creation.
Feels like that should carry some weight in discussion of supporting or incentivizing, you know, private business. But I don't have the number in mind, but it just feels to me like that is something that we benefit from, our community benefits from.
And it definitely is a benefit. I would say it's you know, just looking straight at the return on investment, just looking at the taxes, didn't figure it into that, but more of an indirect benefit to the project as a whole. It's a huge benefit for the fact that eight jobs are coming out of this project. So definitely something to consider when funding this project.
Just a quick comment. One of the challenges when you get into job creation elements, start talking about verification of the jobs, which is challenging. And then like wage levels and those kind of things. I mean, I only say that because enterprise zone is very much tied into all that. So, you know, when you start talking about jobs, it creates a certain complexity. I mean, it's good. I mean, obviously, but it's hard to, then you're going to verify the jobs. You're going to talk about wage levels.
Yes, and how much you know, how do you do the math on the jobs? Even if all jobs are equal, how much are we going to support individual jobs? Yeah.
And
It's complicated fast.
And it is something we could consider. We could take a closer look at. It would not happen at this meeting, but this was, you know, it was considered. We chatted about it in our office, but nothing that got onto the paper here. So
It's definitely a component of economic benefit, though.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
Josh, the developmental agreement or the development agreement would include like timelines
correct.
and provisions to ensure projects are completed and.
Yeah, and ultimately it's 65,000. It's below the $100,000 threshold, so it could be something that's ironed out on our end and wouldn't need to come in front of the board. We'd feel pretty comfortable being able to draft something up, but you know, ultimately didn't put anything together in case something changed this evening.
Anything else? So we have a staff recommendation on the floor. What is your pleasure?
Would you read that again? Your staff recommendation?
Yeah, staff's recommendation, move to approve funding not to exceed $65,000 for the Mint Building redevelopment at 710 East 2nd Street and direct staff to prepare a development agreement between the agency and both the property owner and applicants as equal partners.
Do we need to restate that as a board for a motion? No. Okay, so we can go ahead and take a vote on this.
Is there a motion made?
That we haven't received yet, and we need to have it by one of our board members.
Just to be clear, you don't have to repeat all that language. You can just say, I move to make staff's recommendation. It's in the minutes, but a motion must be made.
Got it.
I mean, that's fine. I'm happy to do it. I'm not sure if we want to hear from the applicant before we do it. Is that part of the?
We'll open that up. Let's go ahead and open that up from the applicant. You have the floor, gentlemen.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm on.
Laughlin, just to be clear, you don't have to hear from the applicant.
I know, but let's do it.
I know, just for the minutes, I just wanted to reflect that, no, you don't have to, but you can do so if you'd like to.
Fair. Let's go.
All right. I really do appreciate the Hawkes position on the taxpayers' money that both Josh and Jonathan represent. I'm a taxpayer. I certainly agree with Commissioner Heggie and Councilman Richardson regarding the intrinsic benefits of this level of investment that cannot be quantified in an ROI in the course of 16 years.
So sorry. I need him to state his name and address
Oh.
for the record.
Name and
I'm
address.
sorry, Steve Light, 5152 15 Mile Road, The Dalles, Oregon.
Now proceed.
Thank you. So some of these these items that we're interested in developing in the Mint building will carry on far beyond the 16 years. Obviously, this is an iconic building representing a significant part of the history of the Dalles. It's over 150 years old, and we feel that it's going to be here for another 150 years old. So it's going to continue to pay taxes. It's going to continue to house businesses that will be employing staff members that are also paying taxes. And with that growth of business, equipment is being purchased. It's also going to produce taxes. So I think that there's an element of this that goes far beyond just a very static calculation of return on a taxpayer's investment. But I know that that is the maybe not necessarily the hallmark, but maybe the determining factor about how urban renewal funds projects. And I know that this has been somewhat discretionary in the past. And there have been some projects that got and received significant funding that did not return on those investment dollars. And the board should be held accountable for those things. So I completely understand that there needs to be some sort of a protocol and process in place, not necessarily just for the funding, but also quantifying that return on that funding. Maybe not necessarily just in the form of what these tax dollars are bringing, but maybe things are a little bit more qualified to the community and what it brings and maybe a less rigid method. So I wanted to also discuss some of the changes in the budget and how they kind of came around. In order for us to receive permitting, we are required to now provide a fire, life, and safety assessment, which we went and it's now foregone. They have discovered that we are going to be required to put in a very substantial fire suppression system in a building that is 14,000 square feet, built in the late 1800s. This is not going to be an easy task, but right now it is going to predicate any permitting moving forward. But before that even happened, I've been occupying this building since 2015. I've had 2 fire marshal inspections. I've qualified for 3 permits that were finalized and approved through building codes, and I've had an OSHA inspection. Not one time was I flagged for not having a fire suppression system in that building. Fire extinguishers, yes. Exit indicators, yes. Distances of fire suppression from locations that are volatile, yes. But in no way did anybody ever raise the red flag that where is fire suppression here? So I know that things change, but this is a significant, I wouldn't say an inconvenience to the project because it is what it is, but it's a significant setback. Not only for the scheduling of this project moving forward, because in order for us to, at this point, get any permitting, we have to accomplish this particular task first. This is definitely going to close my brewery down for, we don't even really know, could be a week. The pub will be closed down for a week, so significant lost revenues. And we're going to have to put this off. We can't obviously do it this summer. It's just not possible. Our brewery right now is just running at full capacity. The pub is significantly busier than it has been ever in its history. So we have this timeline to kind of consider. So Tim and I are going to have to go to building codes and try to negotiate maybe what type of exceptions we can get in order to meet this challenge and move forward with this permitting process. And that's just kind of one of the obstacles that we have to overcome right now. We've realized that the roof membrane, on the other hand, is far outlived its usefulness, easily by a couple of decades. In order to protect these assets that we're going to build into this new infrastructure in the building, we want to make sure that we're protecting it somehow. And of course, this membrane was one of those line items that we put on the budget. Although, from my understanding, replacement of roof is not a qualified or an eligible budget item. But we feel compelled to just put it in there so that you can see the scope of what this project is going to look like when it's all said and done. Another significant part of that is, along with this roof membrane, the parapet around the original building is severely degraded to a point that it needs to have probably significant restoration and repair done to it. And this is also integral to the roof or the roof membrane component. So one of these things, they can't really happen without the other. Now, of course, Main Street has a revitalization program that we're absolutely going to be applying for in January of 24, $200,000 matching grant that will help with this restoration project. This restoration project is probably looking at near 400,000 just for the parapet repair and revitalization. And the roof membrane is probably going to come in just south of that $100,000. So we were hopefully and anticipating that we would be able to get the funding from Urban Renewal for the roof membrane replacement. And in lieu of that, being able to get a grant from Main Street through the revitalization program to cover a portion, hopefully half. We don't have an actual estimate, but Tim has some information and some knowledge about what this cost kind of looks like. And we've already reached out to a few companies to give us some quotes on the actual structure itself, because it's most likely going to have to go through a SHPO to be qualified because of the historic building. Some of these things we had sort of in our scope, but really didn't come to fruition until we had the fire life and safety inspection done. And now we're trying to struggle to move forward with that. I also want to make a couple of corrections to the funding sources that we have. I did misrepresent the Dallas Mint Building's funding capability. I have cash available for some of this, of course. And the Dallas Mint has a line of credit at 6.5% that will be covering the remaining side of that. We have an agreement in place, or at least tentatively, that when I purchase this building, those dollars that are spent to advance this project until we have a PSA in place, those will be passed on to me moving forward. So I just want to clarify that for the record, that it's not all cash savings that is going towards this. Some of it is going to be represented by a personal line of credit with the business.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Mr. Schechtel, do you have anything to add?
My name is Tim Schechtel. I live at 3511 Sandlin Road, the Dalles. Thanks for having us again.
Yes.
I'll just kind of restate what Steve has said about the building code situation there. We bought their building in 2005. We spent a significant amount of money over the next 18 months. We submitted drawings, plan applications, engineering, for a lot of the work that we initially did. Was all permitted and inspected. We did a walkthrough with the fire marshal, or several walkthroughs with them, to identify the firewalls, the fire doors, the exits, all of the things that Steve talked about. And never once was there anything about installing a sprinkler system. So we assumed that the usages, we actually applied for a change of use because we were converting a significant part of the building, which had been warehouse, into a production winery. And we also changed another part of the warehouse on the main floor of the original Mint building into a pub, or our tasting room. And we had a small catering kitchen in the cellar. We installed water and sewage. We attached to the city storm system and the sewer system. So we had really no experience. And when we went in to reactivate a permit that we started in 2016, I had presented plans for that adjustment, we were adding a little bit more space to a plan that was already approved, had a plan review by the state, and we had a building permit for that. And we got significant, all the commercial plumbing infrastructure in place and the electrical requirements in place. It was all inspected to what we call cover, which is ready to put insulation or sheetrock or wall materials on. So pandemic and a few other things prohibited us from going forward with that. But when we tried to renew that and just complete and maybe open one more wall and use another section, then they said, oh, you'll have to have a fire safety and life review or a code survey. So I said, well, okay. So we actually, but we were already moving towards this, finishing this project and expanding the project. And then at the same track, talking with the planning department about available funds and the programs that they had basically at that time. So the complication of requiring a fire suppression system is a huge deal. I just got a bid today from one of 5 companies that we petitioned in Portland. It was over $1 million. I about fell out of my chair. I mean, it was like one other company was highly recommended, and they came in and actually put engineers on site, but they haven't got back to us yet. They did provide an estimate based on averages of installed systems that they have done. And they have done quite a few in the Dalles, I guess, because they were recommended by a local contractor. So that's kind of what I have to say about the history of the development of it wasn't really a blighted building, but it didn't have a lot of attractive features to it. In fact, I had people who were born and raised here never even knew what that was their entire life. Just a warehouse sitting there.
Solder storage,
Yes.
trucking.
Yeah. So I wish that I had the opportunity to walk you through. I know
I was in there.
Mr. McLaughlin has been in there numerous times, but it has more than just a history of being an old building. It had a lot of things going on in the Dalles that relate historically to the formation of our community here. So not to dwell on that. I have done a little bit of research in evaluation of urban renewal projects and plans in the state of Oregon. And I have one from the Association of Oregon Redevelopment Agencies, basically evaluating 7 urban renewal plans. This is dated 2007, but the language and the purpose and the funding is a little bit differently because is tax incremental funding, which is similar to what we're talking about here. But these cities would go out and borrow money and then make investments. And that return on investment was, I think, it was explained, but it wasn't. The range of return on investment was as little as 4% and after the fact, and up to like 35 to 40 to 50% on different projects. So I think that depending on the energy and the management of particular projects, the return on investment can be as little as nothing or quite a lot. What I really gathered from this was the intrinsic value, and it's called a catalytic influence, that if you start something that is exciting and it is monitored and executed extremely well, it creates a lot of energy around that project. And when people see things going on, they're more encouraged to say, hey, I could move to this town. Hey, I could get a blighted property. Hey, I could start a new business. So that's an intrinsic thing that's very difficult to quantify, but it's repeated time and time again in evaluations of projects that have occurred through using urban renewal funds. And I was hoping that maybe that this project could be a catalytic project, but not just for the community to look at, but at the community to work on becoming a smart community and basically working urban renewal. And there is quite a bit of assistance out there to help develop urban renewal, not boards, but urban renewal work groups to work with federal agencies that have money available that will teach us how to make better decisions in small towns. And what I've found is those tailored services are specifically targeted for large, medium, and small communities that have rural interface. So we qualify for that according to what I've seen just recently, looking for a good rationale to support this project to present to you tonight. So that's what I had to say about it. And I think Steve has some very specific questions about the staff report.
Certainly, Joss has articulated the proposal quite well. I mean, really, I'm just hopeful that you take into consideration all of the moving parts to this project and would consider funding us on any level. If the recommendation from the staff is the $64,000 and that gives us the opportunity to apply for another 50, we're awfully damn grateful to have it. And so I appreciate your time and your energy and effort that went into producing this. And I hope you consider funding this project at some level. Thank you.
Instead of 64 is 65,000.
65.
Got it. Just curious on the fire suppression that who is requiring, or that change that's happened? Is that codes or is it fire department? Codes. And that's outside of our scope. Okay. So we have no influence over that as well. Okay.
So Tim, could I make a couple comments?
That's
there?
of course.
So so building codes obviously goes through the county. So I'm thinking that maybe I can at least help. I mean, not that I can change anything, but I think the thing that's important for folks to understand is that like if you continue in an operation, and this is kind of an ignorant person speaking a little bit because I'm not an expert on this stuff, but basically if you don't do anything, then they generally don't require you to do this stuff. It's unfortunately when you start doing things at a certain level and increasing square footage of use and things like that is when the state requires these kind of things to happen. So it's not something that's really subjective that, so it is unfortunately, and this happens a lot, if you're doing development in an existing building, sometimes it's structural, right? Sometimes, the state requires substantial increases. So I think that is something that I maybe will look into, kind of on your behalf to see what's going on. But I suspect that, whatever something happened that triggered, the review and potentially the thing, but it unfortunately is expensive and it happens a lot in other, even residential buildings in our community where, somebody's taking a residential building and then converting into a commercial use. And unfortunately, there's a lot of times when those, old historic buildings have to have these kind of sometimes awful and ugly fire suppression systems, and just because it's state law. So I just think it's important to understand that, but I will look into that and find out what's going on. And if there's some way that there is some flexibility, maybe we can get a little bit more flexibility, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, of course.
But when we become so restrictive that it becomes so expensive, it stymies any development.
Yeah,
And
but
that's the other side of that argument.
I agree. But a lot of times, unfortunately, people feel like, a lot of times there's state or federal rules that are being enforced by localities. So city does that a lot of times too, I'm sure. But let me look into it and maybe there's a little bit of good news.
Excellent. Thank you.
Matthew smiling like, good luck. Hey.
One more thing I'd like to comment on is not getting enough funding from urban renewal will put us back. I mean, it won't happen right away. Even with small amount, that kind of amount, we wouldn't never even be able to get off the dime because building codes for doing anything is going to require the system. So it's kind of a deal breaker for us. I mean, from my perspective. I know Steve is determined as hell to go forward, but it's going to affect him big time. So if there was anything that we could go, we have constraints because of the interest rate. I mean, we started a loan process in 2021, and through the pandemic and everything, I mean, financial markets shut down. We were ready to sign an agreement in November, and basically everything just shut down for us. And so we didn't fund that loan, even though we'd qualified for it. So we started over from scratch again to get the funds we needed to do the build out for Steve and his expanding business. There was and we were just going to borrow the money, help him do the build out, and then we would be adding new space to the rent rolls. At the same time, I was working with the Main Street, who happens to be in an office in our building, to look at grants. I think I even talked to Matthew when he was the director of Main Street, and we ran into a barrier because of SHPA. SHPA said that we weren't on the National Historic Register, even though we were on the State Historic Register and the City Historic Register. That was kind of a requirement to get the funds that we needed to repair the building parapet. So then we started going down to the economic development grant with Main Street a year and a half ago, and that just went nowhere. So we've been trying to get these improvements done because they're well out of the reach of us as the property owners. So the fact that Urban Renewal had programs going, that became very attractive for us in the last 3 or 4 months.
I'm sorry, do you mind, Mr. Chairman, if I ask a couple of questions?
Sure, of course, we can.
Thank you. This is a helpful conversation for me because the ROI was a little shocking, not shocking, but just gave me some pause. What was the average that the folks gave you, that one company, if you don't mind me asking, the average, the estimate ballpark number for sprinkler installation? The one group said $1 million, the next group said.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest Fire. Is that in your
ballpark? I'm just curious.
It was.
I think it was, the range was between like $70,000 and $80,000 for an installation. So significantly less.
Wait, one said $1 million and one said $80,000.
I thought I read the thing wrong. I opened it at like 2 hours before I came here, and I was like, they asked for a floor plan of the building. They didn't want to send anyone out. So the engineers, Bell Design in Bingen, had a preliminary floor plan, a map of the building that they did from scratch. So I had the engineers hash out the code, the areas that would require fire suppression. And then I shipped that off to one company in Portland, but we had another one who was highly recommended by Devco. They came out and spent the better part of a day there measuring and looking at the firewalls and the fire doors and the different separations. I was there for that whole time. And then we were trying to have a package to present at this meeting. And they said, we can't get you a definite, but we can get you a range. And that was 60 to 80,000, which seemed like a lot then, until I saw the estimate that came in today. It was over $1 million. So we're not going with that one.
I was not going with that.
We're going to do it on.
I'd get a second estimate on the parapet
Oh, I
project.
got
It's expensive.
No.
So one thing, I'm looking at my fellow board members here. One thing that gives me a little thought is that the Mint is a historic building, and urban renewal incentives are supposed to act as an accelerant to redevelopment, prosperity, and historic buildings that are unusable or tightly constrained can act like a decelerant. They can smother sort of progress or prosperity. So that, given that this is in the heart of downtown, and the numbers seem to be racking up pretty precipitously for these various bits of work, I guess I'm leaning more towards saying that we would be maybe wise to include that in our calculations along with the RRI and the jobs. We don't want them shut down. We don't want them left constrained. We want the Dells to be Dells downtown to be a place where people can do business with the buildings we have. And we don't have the option probably to knock down that building or have them start from scratch. So something to be maybe mindful of.
Yeah, a couple comments on that. I think that the one thing I was going to ask, and I know you guys have it, but I mean, the number change in terms of the budget. And I think there's a lot of question marks about what that is or is not. So, I mean, we got the budget from before, which seemed pretty solid in terms of what you're proposing. Now there's this issue with the fire stuff. So the one thing I will say is I really appreciate the staff recommendation, the fact that there's kind of some logic and process to it. I mean, I think that you make some good suggestions there, and I don't know if 65,000 is right, but I think that we got to be somewhere, and I think that we can't just fund projects. I said it last time, but the idea of just funding like even half of the project is difficult. It's a little crazy in the world of business. I mean, the business has to make money, and I know Freebridge knows their business. And I mean, they talked about, revenues potentially going up, 50% and all that kind of stuff. I hope that's true. That seems like a challenge in itself, but so that's a good thing, because obviously in order for them to be successful, they have to be there, and there needs to be capital so that they don't have too much debt. And I get that, but we can't really, there's a lot of issues they're going to have that we can't solve all their problems. And I think that what staff is recommending, and then you add in the 50,000, I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at in terms of helping the project. I think the thing that in my mind is maybe the challenging one is dealing with some of the other codes things that they might have to deal with. And I'm happy to help with that. But I just want to say, I mean, I agree with you at some level, but I do think that staff did a really good job of kind of assessing this. And I think it's a good way to assess things going forward. And I think that we have another project we're going to take a look at tonight that will be very interesting, like kind of in the same realm of what's happening here. So I think it's a great project. I hope we can, I definitely support it, and I want to help at some level. I'm not really supportive of helping at the level that, ideally the applicants would want. I think that's a bit rich, but I do think the project is a bit of a question mark now in terms of, is it $1 million or is it 80,000? I mean, I think resolving that may be helpful, even though I don't want to put you off anymore, but it sounds like you're kind of being put off. I don't know. I mean, based on what you said, Tim, I mean, sounds like the project is put off for many months at this point, regardless. And I don't know if that's true or not, because obviously you have a business that you're running.
Well, we won't be able to get a building permit. That's basically it.
So I'm just saying that, like, in the context of us, whether we decide tonight or not, maybe it doesn't even matter at this point, because you can't move forward with this project. And so maybe you need to put some more time into figuring out what this project actually is, because the one thing we wouldn't want to do is make a decision on funding, go
Sure.
through these agreements with you guys, and then you guys say, well, we can't really do the project now because either one, we don't have the permits, two, we don't have the funding. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit.
So we considered going down that. We have this engineer's report. We have the preliminary drawings, which we shipped out, which were marked up for the contractors who do the fire suppression systems. So we have that. We could just go down to building codes and sit down with them. I don't know what, well, I do have experience with building codes since 2005. And I was a contractor on that job. So I was a plumber. I could cover the construction in 2 trades. Actually, I had my general contractor's license. We did everything through my own company for cost. or just a little bit above cost. We had the cooperation of the building department because they had never seen anything like what we were doing. The only reason that we got a permit is that when we had to change the use. But when we started excavating with a mini excavator about 3,000 yards, 300 yards of material out of the cellar, and the building inspector walked by because he saw bricks and smoke and dust and everything coming out the windows. And he wanted to know what we were doing. And we just told him we were cleaning out the basement. And he said, well, you probably have to get a structural or something, an evaluation on this. And I said, we're just cleaning out the basement. And I said, when I get around to deciding what I'm going to do right now, before that, I'm not going to get a permit for anything until we decide exactly what we're going to do. So we did draw up plans. We had Tennyson Engineering engineer everything we did. We had engineers walk in there and make a seismic assessment with a laser. And there would have, in 170 years, there hasn't been less than a half inch of actual settling. There's no seismic damage to note of, and we did massive amounts of repair work to protect the structural architecture in the basement. And then we got the building inspectors to come down and advise us how to put plumbing and electricity through 3-foot thick basalt walls. And they cooperated with us, and they had tremendous discretion on enforcing the code to the letter, or said, that will be sufficient, I will approve that. And so it's kind of a situation where I feel like I have to go back to the building department and say, we've done all these things that you have approved, and now we're faced with this challenge with the fire suppression system. What is your position on that? I'm going to ask them for some kind of consideration of whatever discretion they have to somehow reduce that burden so we can move forward. So that's what I think is my next step, is to go down there, because I've been the only person going down there, with major plans since 2005. So anyway, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, and I'm happy to kind of, on our side, kind of work on that.
Facilitate. All right, so we don't have a motion on the floor yet, but we've got one read. Would you read that one more time for me so I can?
I'll read it.
All right, well, you have it.
The staff recommendation is to move to approve 65,000 for the redevelopment, do the agreement, everything else. So, and that's fine. I think that, I'm curious from Steve, from your perspective, because I want to support this. I was willing to make that motion and stuff, but I don't want to make that motion if that motion is not going to get your project going. And I guess I'm concerned that maybe because of some of these other issues, the project wouldn't be able to move forward. So I'm wondering if you have an opinion, if it's a motion we should make tonight. It sounds like whatever the number is, it's like you guys got some challenges before you that you have to sort out.
Yeah, I would agree.
Am I hearing that correctly? Okay, so it sounds like if we make the motion, you guys kind of can't do the project right now because you got stuff to sort out. So I'm just wondering if it might be, I hate the idea because I know staff put a lot of time into it, but if we make the motion and then it goes back to them and you can't get the development agreement sorted out because the project's changed and they can't do the money, I'm not sure we're making any progress. But I think, I support your project. I think everybody pretty much supports the project.
I support the project as
The
well.
question is how much, I like what staff's doing, but I think you still got the 50,000 doing. But I think if you guys could work out some of your issues, I'll help you on the building code side. I'm not help from the standpoint, because honestly, those are state and federal rules, but we can find out what triggered it. And maybe you can adjust the project slightly to do that. Hard to know, but I think that would be a better approach in my opinion right now.
I agree with that. And discretion is also, if there's any way that they can give some variances, that would have a huge impact on the cost, right? So I think that would be our next hope if they require this suppression unit. But are there any variances to installation and to, size or any of those things would have an impact on that. And I also have a question. I know at the beginning you talked about the funding request meets the criteria of urban growth, because I know in the past, years ago, there were some haphazard decisions made that didn't always meet the guidance of our mission. This one qualifies and meets that, correct?
I mean, from what I read, it does of our mission statement. We talk about job creation. We talk about preserving historic areas. I mean, that right there, I would think that this project really kind of hits it on the head.
I agree with that. It's just that when we're spending taxpayers' money, we want to be frugal. We also want to have leverage for all of the tax money,
Mhm.
and we don't want any wasted money. And I think if we can come back, if you can get more information, I don't know about tabling, or do we want to go ahead? And the motion is on the,
No motion has been made.
I guess we don't have a motion now, so
I was just trying to clarify, there's no point in making a motion even if we did, if the project still is in development. I mean, that's how I kind of see it. So unfortunately, it seems to me like it's probably best to
table it.
put this aside. You guys work out some of the details. I can help you where I can. And then at some point, come back and go back when you get the project defined and you know some of these things that are kind of up in the air right now. Yeah.
But one question, on the funds, what happens to the funds? If you have other projects coming up, what happens to the funds? Is it an annual funding? I heard that next year was going to be a certain amount coming in. Is the money going to be going away? Because I read somewhere where if urban renewal money, it goes back to a taxation district and it funds a fire hall or something like that. So is what happens?
An answer to that?
Yeah, so there's money, there's about I think it's $2.7 million budgeted for this next fiscal year for projects. In the event, hopefully, we can provide that much funding. We can always have an amendment to our budget. So money, the Urban Renewal Agency isn't set to expire or sunset until 2029. So yeah, as far as funding being secured, I think you're safe.
Okay, that's what we.
And we'll quote you. However,
Until 2029.
However, any assistance if you need, like Commissioner
Whatever
Hagee.
my name is.
Hagee,
Well, one last thing.
for my assistance as well.
One last thing. Commissioner McLaughlin, would you want to head up a tour for the board to come and look at this building? I know probably, I won't ask for a raise of hands, but how many people have actually been through the historical part of the Mint?
I have been through the building, basement.
It would give you,
You go.
it would give you a little perspective about what we have done and what we would like to do. So.
I think that would personally be interesting to me, but I don't think it would change, my inclination to support once we have really clear understanding of what the numbers and project is. You kind of already have a nearly solid yes as soon as we can outline those numbers.
And your
I agree.
indication, okay, we have consensus on the board. Okay, does that resolve this issue? Do we need to move ahead?
So no motion. That's the end of this
Correct.
item on the agenda. No problem.
All right. All right, let's move on to the next item, which, let me look it up here. I see that Angie's sitting down, so Angie,
Your public hearing.
Open the-
JP.
I know I'm now is the time.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're going to have a public hearing. And now is the time for a public hearing to consider adopting fiscal year 23-24. First, I will open the public hearing and ask for the staff report. Then I'll ask board member comments or questions. Then I will ask the audience if there's any testimony in support or against this adoption. Then I will close the public hearing. Finally, the board will deliberate and make an action. Are there any questions? May I please hear the staff report? Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, council members. You have before you my agenda staff report 7A. I think it's actually, is this still 7A? This is a,
Sorry to interrupt. Just as a quick formality, Councilor McLaughlin, can you please open the hearing?
I would like to open the hearing.
Thank you very much.
so this is a public hearing regarding the approved budget of 23-24 is required by Oregon budget law in consideration of resolution number 23-002, adopting the fiscal year 23-24 budget for the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency, making allocations and certifying a request for maximum tax revenue to the county assessor. This evening, I propose that we approve the budget as proposed on the April 11th meeting. And the proposed budget would be adopting the budget at $7,161,327. Does anybody have any questions or changes? If we do make changes this evening, it would have to be 5,000 or 10% of the appropriations, or it would have to go back into another public hearing.
Well, I don't have any recommendations for changes, but anyone else? All right. So discussion, any questions for, she's already asked, Angie has asked. Anything from Zoom?
So public testimony, right?
Public testimony?
Is that, sorry, Councilor McLaughlin. So
Oh,
are you
let's
asking
go
for
ahead and
discussion
open it
from the
up
board?
for,
For the board discussion, that's fine. You could do that.
or let's open it up for input from testimony,
Public testimony.
public testimony.
So you're asking for public testimony
I
in
am asking for
support
public testimony
or opposition to
or opposition to
the
this,
adoption.
this adoption. Thank you. Let me
You bet.
wind myself up. All right, is there any public testimony in favor? Any public testimony in opposition? Hearing none, we will move.
Can I co-chair? Can I just ask a question? So Jill Amory's here. She's our county assessor. And Jill, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to bring forward. Maybe you're just listening, but if you had anything, I certainly would like to hear it.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you, Scott. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. No, I would just was observing and wanted to make myself available. I know that there were a couple of projects that I have been working with staff to help estimate taxes. And so really just here at your pleasure to answer any questions. I didn't have anything that I wanted to contribute.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks for being here. And I do appreciate you working with the staff here because I think it's important the return on investment numbers that staff's working on. Jill's helping to find, working with them to provide some of those funds or those numbers. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and let me add, Scott, also the applicants, quite impressive. They have done their due diligence and they came in requesting information as well. So kudos to them.
Okay, we have received any input from testimony, public testimony. That concludes that.
It would be appropriate to close the public hearing and have a deliberations among.
I would
the board.
love to close this public hearing and have a deliberation of board members. All right, deliberations.
Could I I'll put a motion on the floor and then we can discussion. So I'd move approval of resolution 23-003, resolution adopting the fiscal year 2023-24 budget for the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency, making allocations and certifying a request for maximum tax revenue to the county assessor.
Hearing the motion, do we have any seconds?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Did you get the names? Okay. Any other discussion?
I have none.
Hearing or seeing none, I'd like to have a vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
One in opposition, same. Hearing none, it's carried unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, that's
Got Angie.
okay. Where do we go from here? Is this executive session? Nope, not yet. Okay. Well, we got the public hearing done. We got action items, resolution. Staff, well, we have staff updates and staff comments.
Yeah, I'll be quick for you. An update on the incentive program. We have uploaded our English and Spanish versions of both our guidelines and applications. They're fillable, they are loaded, they are updated on the city's website. So I met with a group earlier, a Latina business group last week to discuss the applications. Board member Saldivar provided that connection there. So that was a nice little meetup. So those are good to go. We're excited. We've already provided probably 2 of those applications out for some projects coming. So we're excited for this summer to see those applications come in. And also some other updates to the program. We will be finalizing, essentially writing our final checks for 3 projects that have been completed around downtown. As you may have noticed, the Soda Works Pink building, we probably discussed this last time around, is down. It's cleaned up and so that was one project. The other one was just about half a block away from that. And it used to be the Tijuana Taqueria. They completely redid their parking lot and
It looks nice.
Looks really nice. And they are hoping for a soft opening May 22nd. So I would encourage everybody to get on over there. I'm very excited for that applicant. There's been a little bit of a wait for her through this whole process. So I'm really excited that she's moving forward and opening her doors. Other than that, the other update I have is just this ongoing saga of the Tony's building, but good news. We had our bid closing today. So more information on that to come. We intend on awarding that project at the next meeting. So staff will look at the bids that came in and review them. And yeah, we'll have some good news for the next meeting around.
Quick
And-
question on that. How many bids did we get?
We received 2 bids.
Thanks.
Yep.
I noticed development on West 2nd Street going out towards the old Les Schwab. What's in development there on the right? It would be
East or west?
It would be going east on 2nd, going out.
Old Route 30 past Les Schwab.
Is it on the cliff side or the riverside?
It's on the cliff side.
Side. Yeah, so there's kind of, that little pocket of 2 businesses, I
Yes,
think.
yes.
Yeah, so one of them is an HVAC company.
Oh.
And the mobile HVAC company is kind of a satellite office. I think they're based out of Portland. And right next to that is a new family fun center.
Okay.
So both of those, there was quite a few safety improvements that needed to be addressed due to the fact that it's on a state highway. So those have been addressed, and I think they'll probably be moving forward relatively soon, opening doors on those as well.
I also see Miss Hanlon here. Do you have anything that you would like to present or next segment? Okay, got it. I just didn't want to miss you. All right, that's great on that. So that concludes the staff comments and project updates. Do we have any board member comments or questions? All right, then this concludes this portion of the meeting. We're going to go into executive session, and there is a script that I need to read, correct? And now is the time for that's public hearing. Okay, just a second. Let me find it. It's all handwritten notes. Okay, on the other side, nope. You didn't write it for me, so. But okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right. The agency board will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-666, which allows the agency board to meet in executive session
660. Sorry.
660, which allows the agency board to meet in executive session to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. representative of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representative of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything that is said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. The agency does not expect any actions coming out of the executive session. Right? All right, we're going to take a brief